Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to a very beautiful, clear, sunny London. Very crisp, kind of autumnal morning here. First of all, first things first, let's get our phones switched off and do all those things we do when we start this little 15-minute session. If you've got headphones, use them. It's a nice way to kind of isolate yourself somewhat from the sounds in your office. Also, if you have a microphone, I want you to start checking that it works properly with your system, because the 8th session, this is session 5 of 8, the 8th session will be a kind of discussionary session, okay? And so in that session we'll have a lot of chance to talk with each other, which will be great, because there's not much chance for feedback in these shorter sessions. The other thing is, of course, make sure you've got your pens and your pads ready. You're going to be doing some note-taking today. So, well, you might do some note-taking. You can kind of remember stuff as well. That's fine too. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. Let's just get started how we always start. Let's do a little 5-minute pause together. I'll always run these as though you haven't done them before. I'll always run them as though you're doing them for the first time. And that's because we do have new people joining us all the time. But what I will say is, to those new people, do go back and do the first session, do the second session, the third and the fourth session, and try to do them weekly if you can. Try to do them weekly, and in between, do the daily practices. Use the CD, use the Calm app, whatever it is you like to use for your guided meditations, and put that routine of daily practice into your life, because that is where the efficacy in mindfulness and emotional intelligence comes from doing a daily practice. It needn't be 45 minutes long. It could be as short as 4 minutes or around maybe 16 minutes, but it does need to be as a part of your routine. And in fact, lesson 4, last week's lesson, showed you how to do that, how to put it into your routine. So that's also a good one to watch. Okay, so if you could do me a massive favor and get yourself into the position you get into when you meditate. You put your feet nice and flat on the floor and start to feel that sensation of your feet. You're going to use your physiology. You're going to use your body as a sort of mechanism to focus. You know, despite what you may think when you look in the mirror in the morning, you are walking around in a bona fide miracle of life, and that's what we're going to use today, this vehicle that you're inhabiting. Put your hands on your thighs, and again, maybe give your hands a bit of a wiggle so you can kind of feel that sensation, that point of contact. And while it is possible to meditate with your eyes open, close your eyes down, because your eyes contain so much information. It's much, much easier to do this with your eyes closed. And allow that act itself to kind of bring your focus inside a little bit, bring your focus into your interior, into your mechanism, into your body a little bit. And breathe in through your nose again. The reason we breathe in through our nose is because there's a nerve in our nose that's connected directly with our heart. And it's the easiest and quickest way for us to become instantly physiologically aware of our breathing. And as you breathe, just let your breathing do its thing. You'll find that in this seated position, you need very, very little breathing at all. You need very little oxygen, in fact. You'll find that your breathing will naturally lengthen and naturally deepen and naturally slow. So just really, if you like, marvel at that. Use one of those 7 mindfulness words, those keywords that we had in the earlier sessions, the beginner's mind, to really look at the air entering the boundaries of your body. In your mind's eye, just really picture the air coming into the boundaries of your body, and really picture the air exiting the boundaries of your body. And it's worth remembering at this point, the Hindi word for breath is the same as the Hindi word for life, prana. And so that's worth remembering, those 2 words, that one word meaning the same thing, life and breath. And so when you feel sort of quite comfortable and quite relaxed, what I'm going to ask you to do is to see if you can hold your cognitive awareness, all of your attention on your breathing. And the trick is this: if you get distracted by something in the room that makes a noise, or the urge to giggle, or a noise outside the room, or a pain in the body, or a thought, or a memory, or a feeling, or anything at all, don't fight the distraction. allow yourself to be distracted long enough to bring your focus back, long enough to label what you're being distracted by, long enough to give it a label, give it a note. And once you've noted what you're being distracted by, then bring your entire cognitive awareness and all your focus back to your breathing. This is the trick. Meditation is not a singular point of focus. Meditation is also the act of bringing your focus back. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to time 60 seconds, and I'll do this with you. Just see if you can allow your focus and your attention just to fall on your breathing for 60 seconds. So here we go. We'll do 60 seconds. Here we go. Okay, so I'd just like you to allow yourself to come back to clock time. You can wiggle your fingers or wiggle your toes. You can come back quick. You can come back slow. There's no rush here. And there's probably three kinds of people right now. There are those whose minds were impossibly busy. There are those whose minds were rather clear and actually who found that rather easy. And there are those who are somewhere in between. It really doesn't matter which category you fall into. What matters is that you did it. There's no such thing as a fail. Remember that principal myth. It is a myth that meditation is this singular point of focus. Meditation is also the act of bringing your focus back. Every single one of us would have in some way seen our thoughts as somewhat separate from ourselves. We're one of the only species on the planet who can do that. And that's what the first step really in mindfulness is experiencing that sort of separation, that sort of little bit of distance from your thoughts. Okay, now I'm going to do some quite advanced neuroscience here. I'm going to put you through a little bit of a neuroplasticity lesson. So I'm going to get started on that right away because there's quite a lot to cover. Run over a tiny weeny bit on this, so I pop a couple of minutes, but I really want to make sure I get this done. So this is a sort of neuroscience lesson regarding neuroplasticity. I'm going to show you some fMRI scans. I'm going to show you 4 scans, in fact, but want you to have a look at this quote first. This was a study that was done a few years ago in the UK. It was in the BBC website. I've just literally lifted this from the BBC website. And it talks about the idea that taxi drivers, when they learn the knowledge, which is all the streets in London, before they do their jobs, they learn all the streets in London. They brought all these taxi drivers in and they analysed their brains, and they found that the part of their brains that was responsible for spatial memory had thickened. The pathways, the neural pathways had thickened up. Your brain, up until about 15 years ago, we thought that the brain was fully formed by the age of 20 or 21. This is not the case. In fact, your brain changes throughout your life, and in fact, you have an almost unlimited capacity for learning. So that's something to remember there. So I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove it with some fMRI scans, and I want to just sort of demystify these scans a little bit. On the right-hand side, you'll see a bar chart there. Now, there's 2 people represented in that bar chart. There's the novice, and then there's the mindfulness trainee, okay? So the mindfulness trainee and the novice. The mindfulness trainee is the black bar chart and the novice is the grey. The novice is not represented in the pictures. The pictures show fMRI scans which measure changes in blood flow in the brain. Blue is a reduction in blood flow and red is an increase in blood flow. Now what we're looking at the moment is the dorsal medial prefrontal cortex. Now, the DMPFC is responsible for your monkey mind, your sort of internal narrative, your babble that kind of drags you along all day long. And as you can see, after meditation practice, this area of the brain actually experiences a reduction in blood flow. Okay, so that's the point I want to make about the monkey mind, that part of your brain that is the monkey mind. Okay, the next piece, I just threw this in because I thought it was interesting. It's just another area of the brain. I'm going to show you 4 areas of the brain today, but really mindfulness practice and meditation practice has an effect on many more areas of the brain than just these 4, but I just pulled these out for today because I thought it'd be a nice, easy way to give you a quick neuroscience lesson. This is the lateral prefrontal cortex, the LPFC. The easiest way to describe this is that it's a bit like a computer's RAM. I don't know if you know this, but computers have 2 kinds of storage. One is the hard drive and one is the RAM. And the RAM is a sort of rapid access memory. And this is your brain's version of the RAM. This is the memory that your brain rapidly can access. So this is the LPFC, the lateral prefrontal cortex. And as you can see, the meditator has experienced an increase in blood flow in this area of the brain, a thickening of the neural pathways, if you like. Thirdly, this is important for mindfulness, specifically for emotional intelligence, emotional homeostasis, your ability to regulate your emotions. This is the insula, that's the part of your brain that's responsible for regulating your emotions. And again, you can see there, that piece of the brain has experienced a thickening of the neural pathways after this time of meditation. Incidentally, the meditation trainee in this example had been meditating for 8 weeks, and these scans are an average, so some would have experienced more, some would have experienced less, and these may look like very small areas, but actually there are, literally hundreds of areas within the brain responsible for different things, and this is actually an enormous change, really, if you think about it, so especially if you add them all up. Next up, I threw this one in really because I like the fact that it has such a long name. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have a sort of love-hate relationship with the science. The science is very good because it's very arresting. It sort of stops people in their tracks, but also it's a sort of mystifying thing as well. Scientists, and I do consider myself a scientist, they tend to find something they don't understand and give it a name that no one understands and then abbreviate that name so no one ever has a chance of understanding it. So me giving you this lesson, I hope I'm demystifying the science enough so that you kind of get it, if you like. This section of the brain, the secondary somatosensory cortex, very simply put, is your sort of semantic processing. It's kind of how shall I say, how shall I respond, what shall I say? And again, you see here, this area of the brain has experienced an increase in blood flow. All right, so that's that there. So look, that's the end of a very sort of simplified neuroscience. I hope you don't mind, all the jargon or whatever, and I will, in my follow-up emails, as usual, I'll put a little bit of a notes in there so you can see that. Also, in the follow-up emails, I'll give you a link to the videos. Each video is available for free for a week after the first transmission. And now, all those early videos, they're 99p each. So if you wanted to catch up, it's going to cost you £3.96 to catch up. All right, so I just want to warn you about that. All right, so hopefully you can get the free stuff while it lasts. That's the main thing. Lastly, I want to touch on something, and this is quite important. So I've got just a minute to tell you this, and I think this is important. So this is useful information that you can also impart as well. Very often, well, no, not very often, but 10 or 20% of people that I come across, when they find this sort of quiet, calm sort of stillness inside themselves, it kind of freaks them out a little bit. They get anxious, or they even become slightly fearful of it. They're like, whoa, what was that? There are very individual reasons for this, but a broad reason is that your monkey mind, your internal narrative that sort of drags you along all day, isn't necessarily up for this mindfulness thing. It isn't necessarily up for being quiet. And I know there's probably a few of you kind of smiling right now because you probably know exactly what I mean. And that can manifest as a bit of anxiety or a bit of fear. So the solution is fantastically simple. And the solution is great because it actually, not only does it sort of ground you, but it also takes you deeper into the meditation. And of course, please feel to impart this knowledge if you come across anyone who experiences that sort of slightly anxious moment. You simply refocus on your breathing. You simply come back to your breathing, come back to your physiology. And that has two effects. It grounds you, takes you back to your physiology, which is an ultimately safe place. Your breath is an ultimately safe place as well. But it also, because breathing is very often part of a meditation, it also takes you deeper into the meditation as well. So that's a sort of solution for those people. There's few people out there, about 1 in 5, who get that, oh, what's that quiet spot? What is that? A sort of moment, an anxious moment, if you like. Okay, so look, that's all we've got time for today. Again, thank you so much for coming. It's very, very humbling to do this. So I'm really, extraordinarily humbled by doing this. And do keep your questions coming. I'm very easy to get hold of. Do please share the link to anyone you think might benefit from a 15-minute kind of zap of mindfulness. And I will see you next week for session 6. And hopefully by then, if you haven't already seen the earlier sessions, you will have caught up. Okay, so again, great to see you. See you next week, and thank you very much for coming.